Okay.
Good evening, Alfia. Alfia, can you try once more? Good evening, Anjun. Are you still facing the issue? Okay. Can you leave and join again, Alfia? We'll wait. Just leave and join. Okay, guys, so we'll have a quick recap of what we've discussed yesterday. We had finished off our first chapter. Yesterday, we discussed about transferable personal allowance, or what we call as marriage allowance. So there are three conditions that needs to be satisfied in order to do a computation of marriage allowance or give marriage allowance to one of the spouse or the civil partner. First of all, both the partners or the civil partners or the spouse, both should be basic rate taxpayer. Number two, they should make a joint election or a joint declaration where the person with the excess personal allowance is willing to transfer their personal allowance to the others, their counterpart. And the transferor should have a minimum of 1260 of personal allowance unused. Now, how does a marriage allowance work? The transferor will transfer 1260 into 20% to their counterpart, and their counterpart will deduct 252 from their total income tax liability. We have discussed three scenarios. Marriage allowance cannot result in a negative figure. Maximum the answer can be 0. So we deduct it after calculating the total income tax liability. So after calculating the total income tax liability of the transferee, we deduct marriage allowance, which is a fixed figure of 1260 into 20%. Now, by any chance, the existing income tax liability is less than 252, you can deduct the exact amount and make it 0. അതിൽ താഴേക്ക് പോകാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല. ഇപ്പം ഇൻകം ടാക്സ് ലയബിലിറ്റി 60 അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ മാക്സിമം മാരേജ് അലവൻസ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് 60 കുറയ്ക്കാൻ പറ്റത്തുള്ളൂ. അതിൽ 252 കുറയ്ക്കാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല. Second thing is, let's assume that the transferor net income is 12,000. That means they don't have sufficient 1260 to transfer. So what they have to do is, first they'll keep aside 1260 and they will only use 11,310 personal allowance for their personal purpose. Then the normal computation for the transferring. I hope you remember all these aspects. And finally, we discussed accrued interest scheme. This is to calculate the savings income or the interest income assessable on gilt-edged securities or government securities, which is nominal value into percentage into time apportionment. I've given you a quick summary as well. And you have to read the PDF, okay? I am making the work easy for you. I don't recommend you to read the textbook. If you want, you can read it. Absolutely fine. I think both of you are doing you're not doing any other college programs or anything. You're only solely investing in ACCA. So you have plenty of free times during the day. So if you want, you can read the textbook. Now, let's assume a case where you are not interested to read the textbook. Minimum, just read my PDF note. That's the bare minimum I expect of you. So there are some additional points in my PDF notes which I have not discussed, which are very simple things. For example, what is the marginal effective rate of tax, which is 60%. That's a fixed answer, 60%. So there is nothing extra you need to study. They'll not ask you for any explanation. That it will be a very straightforward question. Effective marginal rate of tax, 60%. So these are some add-on points which I have included in your PDF. Today we are starting off with an extremely new area, which is employment income. Now, I want you to understand the way we are discussing this, okay? First and foremostly, I hope you guys remember our taxable income format. So, I hope you remember our taxable income format. So, how do you calculate your taxable income? So, how do you calculate your taxable income? There is a non-savings income column. There will be a savings income and a dividend income column and a total column. Then, coming to the non-savings part, you'll always start with trade income. Now, so far in all the questions I had given you I've given that figure directly. But in chapter 7, we will discuss how to calculate the trade income so that we can put it in the main format. Then I asked you to make a deduction of trade loss, which I said I will discuss in chapter 10. So that is a matter for chapter 10. Then I asked you to write employment income, which is our chapter 3. Chapter 3 and chapter 4 together. Okay. Then I asked you to write property income. Property income is basically chapter 6. Now, what are you dealing in these chapters? The figures which I had directly given to you. Idana trade income, idana employment income, idana property income. And ഞാൻ directly തന്നോണ്ടിരുന്ന amountകളൊക്കെ ഇനി മുതൽ നിങ്ങൾ കണ്ടുപിടിക്കണം. You will have to calculate these figures from the scratch. Then you have to put that in the main format and you have to calculate the taxable income and income tax liability. Now you understood why it is a 15-mark question. മനസ്സിലായോ എന്തുകൊണ്ടാണ് 15 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കുന്നതെന്ന്? Otherwise, there is nothing difficult about it. If all these figures are directly given to you, what is the difficulty there? Why should they give you 15 marks for that? So the idea is you will calculate one by one figures, which will not be directly given in the question. You have to do adjustments, find out these figures. Then you'll calculate pension income. There is no specific chapter for pension income. The amount will be directly given in the question. But we will be discussing about pension in chapter 5, not about pension income, some other tax relief related to pension. So, did you understand what you're going to study in the next 2 chapters? You're going to learn how to calculate employment income. And once you calculate that employment income, you can put it in the taxable income format under non-savings income. And you can calculate the net income, taxable income, and income tax liability. Did you understand the purpose? Did you understand the purpose of what you're going to study in the next chapter?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it clear? എന്താണ് പഠിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി പോകുന്നതെന്ന് മനസ്സിലായോ നിങ്ങൾക്ക്?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Why am I not getting a response? It can be a yes or a no. I can even accept a no also. No എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാലും കുഴപ്പമില്ല, പക്ഷെ you have to respond. Okay. Alfia? Fine. You're responding? Okay. So something is wrong with your microphone. Anjun, can you hear her? Because I can't hear. No, we are not able to hear you. We are not able to hear you, Alfia. എന്തോ ഒരു പ്രശ്നം ഉണ്ടല്ലോ ഇന്ന് മൊത്തത്തില്. എപ്പോഴും യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന സിസ്റ്റം തന്നെയാണോ ഇന്ന് യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന? ഹെഡ്സെറ്റ് എന്തെങ്കിലും കണക്ട് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടോ? ജസ്റ്റ് ക്ലിക്ക് ഓൺ ദാറ്റ് മ്യൂട്ട് ബട്ടൺ ഒന്നുകൂടെ ക്ലിക്ക് ചെയ്തിട്ട്
ഹലോ, കേക്കണ്ടോ?
ഒന്ന് ട്രൈ ചെയ്തേ.
ഹലോ മാം.
എന്തെങ്കിലും സെറ്റിംഗ്സ് ചെറുതായിട്ട് മാറിയിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. You can hear her now. So is it my problem? Okay, so something's wrong. Wait a minute. Can you speak one more, Alfia?
ഹലോ മാം.
Yeah, okay. Fine. Okay, so this is what we're going to study. Now, how to calculate employment income. There are so many things that you have to look into. Now, I have summarized this for you for the ease of studying. I will give you a format. Now, don't get overwhelmed by the format, okay? Trust me, all of this together will never appear in an examination. That is my word. But I want you to know these are like the maximum possible adjustments that will appear. Now, I have made two formats here, this one and this one. So anything that is missing from here, you can find it in this format as well. Both of them are same. One is a little more elaborate, that's all. So I'll just show you how to calculate employment income. Now, what do you mean by employment income? I am working under a person or a company, under an employer, under an employment contract. Okay, so what are the incomes that I receive as part of my employment? The very common income that you're familiar with is salary. The first thing that will come to your mind is salary. Yes or no? Now, we are taking it in terms of tax year. So we have to look for the salary Anita has earned from 6th April 2023 to 5th April 2024. That is the salary you have to take into consideration. Now, let's say Anita only worked for 8 months. You have to take the annual salary, which means monthly salary into 12. Now, let's say Anita only worked for 8 months during the tax year. That is between 6th April 2023 and 5th April 2024. But only for 8 months. So, the monthly salary into 8. Any doubt? The monthly salary, sometimes they'll give you the monthly salary. Sometimes they'll directly give you the annual salary. Now, what happens is some students forget to convert monthly into annual. And some students who are very, who are very careless, they again convert annual salary into 12. So read the question very carefully. See whether they've given you monthly. If monthly convert into annual or into the number of months you have worked. It's not necessary that it's always 12 months. You might have only worked for 3 months. So you have to look between 6th April 2023 to 5th April 2024. Then there is bonus. Another type of employment income is bonus. Now there is something known as rules of earnings. I'll tell you that. Then something else is overtime payment, tips, commission, gratuities, and don't worry, this will be directly given. Okay, any overtime payment will be directly given, commission, gratuities, cash and non-cash vouchers. You don't have to worry, it will be provided to you. Then to this, you're going to add excess of mileage allowance. And I have put a star for excess of mileage allowance and a star for deficit in mileage allowance. Why did I write that? ഒന്നെങ്കിൽ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യനിൽ എക്സസ് ആയിരിക്കും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യനിൽ ഡെഫിസിറ്റ് ആയിരിക്കും. The question will either be excess of mileage allowance or it will be deficit in mileage allowance. No question he will have both of them. Either excess or deficit. Now, if you notice, I add the excess, I deduct the deficit. Okay. Now, I'll tell you what is mileage allowance. Then you have to add all the non-cash taxable benefits. Now, if you notice, what am I adding? I'm adding all the good things I received from my employment. I got salary, that's a good thing. I have to pay tax on that. I got bonus, that's a good thing. I have to pay tax on that. I got overtime payment, tips, commission, gratuity, cash and non-cash vouchers. I have to pay tax on that. Then there is something called as excess of mileage allowance. അതായത് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അർഹതയുള്ളതിലും കുറച്ച് കൂടുതൽ പൈസ കിട്ടി എന്നാണ് അതിന്റെ മീനിങ്. So I have to pay tax on that. There is non-cash taxable benefits. These are not in the form of cash, but you have to pay tax. Do you know? If you might have your relatives or your siblings who are working in managerial position who are getting benefits other than salary. They might be getting a company flat, they might be getting a company car. They can use it for their personal purpose. They can use this flat for personal purpose. They can use this car for personal purpose. Company might give them interest-free loans. Company might give them private use of assets. Say company is going to give them a laptop which they can use privately. They're going to give them a home entertainment system which they can use privately. So these are things which are not in the form of cash, but still you get it from your company as part of employment. So tax authority is telling you, I know that this is not cash, but still you have to pay me tax for this. See, you are getting a benefit. When do I call it a benefit? When nothing goes out of my pocket, but I'm still able to enjoy. I call it as a benefit. Yes or no? അതിനല്ല ബെനിഫിറ്റ് എന്ന് വിളിക്കുന്നത് നിങ്ങളുടെ പോക്കറ്റിൽ നിന്ന് 10 പൈസ പോയിട്ടും ഇല്ല എന്നാൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അത് എൻജോയ് ചെയ്യാനും പറ്റുന്നുണ്ട്. സോ വെൻ യു ഡോണ്ട് ഹാവ് ടു പേ ഫോർ ദ ഹൗസ്, യു ഡോണ്ട് ഹാവ് ടു പേ ഫോർ ദ കാർ, യു ക്യാൻ ഗെറ്റ് എൻ ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് ഫ്രീ ലോൺ, യു ക്യാൻ ഗെറ്റ് അസറ്റ് ഫോർ പ്രൈവറ്റ് യൂസ് without paying any money. That is a benefit. Now tax authority expect you to pay tax on these benefits even if they are not in the cash form. And there are some other non-cash benefits as well, which we'll come to discuss later. Understood? So all the good things you have to add. Why are you adding it? Because you have to pay tax on it. Then there are certain amounts that you can deduct. Now, this is the main area. You will easily remember the things to add because it is common sense. If you are getting a benefit, you have to add it. So that is common sense. But what are the things that you need to deduct? This is where you can get a little confused. So it can be either excess of mileage allowance or deficit in mileage allowance, right? So I've written that. I'll come to that. Then there is employee. Please keep in mind, employee contribution to OPC. Now, what does OPC? Do you remember what do you mean by PPC? Do you remember what do you mean by PPC?
Personal pension contribution.
Exactly. So OPC is occupational pension contribution. We'll talk about PPC and OPC in chapter 5. For the time being, just keep in mind, there are two types of pension scheme. One is a PPC, which is personal pension contribution, which anyone can join. If you are worried about your pension age, anyone can join the scheme. They can put money into the pension scheme, and after their retirement, they'll get the money back. OPC or occupational pension scheme, not everyone can join the scheme. You have to be an employee. You have to have an occupation in order to join the OPC, because it is not a private scheme. This is a scheme which is introduced by your company where you are working, or your company will have an internal pension fund, or they will align with institutions like private pension institutions, and they will create a pension fund. So only if you are an employee, only if you are working under a company, you can join as an OPC member. So whose contribution to OPC? Employee. Anita's contribution to OPC can be deducted. Now, just tell me, what is the logic behind deducting it? What is the logic behind deducting it? Once you get the logic, then you'll remember things. That's why. So think of it like this. Anita is receiving a salary of, let's say, 120,000. Okay, that's a lot of salary. On top of that, during the tax year, she also received a bonus of 20,000. And on top of that, she also received some taxable non-cash benefits. And let us just give the amounts of non-cash benefits as 35,000. These are not in cash form, okay? They're not in cash form. They can be a house, they can be a car, they can be a private asset, they can be beneficial loan. We will convert them into cash form, and the cash equivalent is 35,000. And the cash equivalent value is 35,000 എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഇതൊക്കെ cash ആയിട്ട് കിട്ടുന്നതല്ല, ഗുഡ്സ് ആയിട്ട് നമുക്ക് കിട്ടുന്നതാണ്. പക്ഷെ നമ്മൾ അതിനെ ക്യാഷിലേക്ക് കൺവേർട്ട് ചെയ്തെടുക്കണം. So once I convert into cash, it is 35,000. So tax authority is telling Anita, this is your total income. This is your total employment income. So my total employment income during tax year 23-24, okay, this is during 23-24, is 175,000. Now, do I need to pay tax on this 175,000? Does a tax authority expect me to pay 175,000? So should I write this 175,000 here? So the answer is a big no. Tax authority is telling you, Anita, I understand that you got this much money, but I don't expect you to pay tax on this 175,000. Kitne amount in a tax venda. You can make some deductions from this. Now, what are the deductions? There are certain expenses that Anita incurred as part of her employment. Okay. So let's say Anita got an yearly basis, she got 175,000, but she also had some expenses. She had traveling expense. She contributed to her, Anita contributed to her OPC, Occupational Pension Scheme. Anita suffered other employment related expenses. Now, these are all expenses Anita had. So, tax authority is telling Anita, deduct it. Deduct all these things. And then, if there is anything extra, you pay me tax on that. Understood? Did you understand why we are deducting certain things? Did you understand the purpose of deducting?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So, now let's come back to our format and see what are the things that we can deduct. So one is deficit in mileage allowance. Second one is, keep in mind, employee. I am highlighting that word, employee contribution to OPC. So employee, Anita will make a contribution. Contribution Anita ilekku paisa iduna. She will put the money into which scheme? Is it PPC? No, it is OPC, Occupational Pension Scheme. So question somewhere in the question they'll say employee contributed 2,500 into her OPC. So immediately you need to do this step. So less employee contribution to OPC, you will deduct that 2,500. So tax authority is telling deduct it, no problem. Then there are professional subscription payment made by employee. Now, if you see all these points, did you notice something? If you read all these points, there is a common element. These are all payments made by employee. എന്നാലല്ലേ മൈനസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റത്തുള്ളൂ. എംപ്ലോയിയുടെ പോക്കറ്റിൽ നിന്ന് പൈസ പോയാലേ അത് മൈനസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റത്തുള്ളൂ. Now, professional subscription payment. Let's say I got this job in this company because I was an ACC affiliate. And you know that in order to remain an affiliate, you have to make subscription payment, yes or no? Do you guys pay student subscription payment?
Yes,
do you guys pay every student subscription payment every year? Yes. So once you are an affiliate, you have to pay the affiliate subscription payment, which is just a 2,000 difference. Apo, why are you paying this professional subscription payment? Because in order to continue in your job, you need to pay. Basically, you are paying it not for your entertainment, you are paying it to continue in the employment. You are not paying this to your company, you are paying it to ACCA. So you can deduct that amount. So every year when I make a payment to ACCA, when I make a professional subscription payment, I can deduct it here. Less professional subscription payment by Anita. Anita have to make the payment, okay? The money has to go from Anita's pocket. So let's say it is 10,000 pounds. Then travel expenses to temporary workplace paid by Anita. Now let me make it very clear. What do you mean by a temporary workplace? A temporary workplace is a place where you work for less than 24 months. So if you work at a place for less than 24 months, you can call it as a temporary workplace. Is that clear? So let's say you have to travel from home to temporary workplace. So let's assume a situation like Anita is settled in Kochi. Her permanent office is in Kochi. But once in a while, Anita has to travel to Calicut as well. So for Anita, Calicut posting is normally for 1 week, 2 weeks, which is less than 24 months. So for Anita, Calicut is temporary workplace. And normally what happens is when I travel from Kochi to Calicut, I can claim travel expense reimbursement. But when I travel from my home to the Kochi headquarters, I cannot claim a reimbursement there. Why? Because that is my permanent workplace. This is where I work all the time. This is where I'm settled in. I cannot collect any money on behalf of that. But when I travel to any temporary workplace, when I travel specifically to meet a client, sometimes you have to travel to meet a client. So, when you pay the travel expenses on such situation, you can claim a deduction. So let's say Anita paid. So let's say Anita paid less travel expense paid by Anita to, it can be to meet a client. Okay. It can be to meet a client. It can be to a temporary workplace. Now keep in mind, temporary workplace means a place where you work for less than 24 months. You can sometimes see the word secondment as well. Secondment is also temporary workplace. The only thing you should keep in mind is this 24 months time limit. 24 months. So let's say Anita paid for it, she can deduct it. Now, next one is other expenses wholly and exclusively relevant for work paid by employee. There can be other expenses which Anita paid not for her personal entertainment but for her work. Wholly and exclusively for work. Okay. So, in that situation, that amount can be deducted. Now, there is something called as exempt benefit. What do you mean by exempt benefit? Exempt benefit means no money is going out of your pocket, but you are receiving certain advantages. You are receiving advantages without paying any amount. The tax authority is telling you, I don't want tax on that. It's okay. You keep it. I don't want tax on that. So you should remember one thing. You should put a 0 there. What will you do? You'll put a 0 there. It is exempt. Yes, we agree that. We don't have to pay tax on that. You don't have to add it. You can't deduct it. Put a 0. So I'll give you exempt benefits is discussed in chapter 4. I'll tell you a couple of examples for exempt benefits. So exempt benefits will include, let's say the company is providing a gym, exempt. Company is providing workplace nursery or for your child. Company is providing a daycare for your child, free. You are not spending any money there. You can freely enroll your child. You don't have to pay tax on that. So sometimes company will pay you work from home allowances. Sometimes company will pay you relocation allowances. These are all money that you get, but you don't have to pay tax on that. This is what we call as exempt benefit. Put a 0. Don't forget to put a 0. So the list will be provided in chapter 4. Then there is a situation known as non-deductible. There is something known as non-deductible expenses paid by the employee. Non-deductible expenses paid by the employee. So who paid it? Anita paid it. But can Anita deduct it? What do you mean by deduct? Deduct can Anita minus those figures? No, she cannot deduct the figures. So what are, so I've included a couple of examples. Travel expense to permanent workplace. I told you. When I travel to my permanent office, if I incur any travel expense, Uber money, I can't reimburse that. That's a gone expense. I can't add it. I can't deduct it. I have to put a zero. So non-deductible expenses paid by the employee. Then I'll give you another example. Sometimes the question will say, Anita paid golf membership fee to entertain her clients. Yes, Anita incurred the expense, but she cannot deduct it. You have to indicate a zero. Then, this is employer contribution to OPC slash, you can say PPC as well. Okay, OPC slash PPC. What is the difference from the previous point? What is the difference from the previous point? In the previous point, it was contribution made by
employee.
Anita. Yes, employee. This Anita scheme like paisa idunnathana. What is this? This is made by Anita. Let's say V-Guide. V-Guide is my employer. So my employer is putting money into my scheme. I will have a scheme and my employer is putting money into the OPC or the PPC. I don't have to pay tax on that. I cannot deduct it. I don't have to add it. I just need to put a zero. Understood? Got the idea?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you understand where you have to put a zero? So when it is an exempt benefit, put a zero. Exempt benefit means you received it from your company. This employer contribution to OPC PPS is an example of exempt benefit. You received it from your company. You don't have to pay tax on that. Put a zero. Second case, non-deductible expenses paid by employee. You paid it, but as per the tax rule, you cannot deduct it. For example, travel expenses, I've indicated travel expenses to permanent workplace. Then golf, always a common one is golf membership to entertain a client. I paid it. I cannot deduct it. I will just put a zero. Then, there is one more thing. Charity donations under, this is not gifted donation, okay? This is normal charity donation under payroll deduction scheme. I'll tell you what is payroll deduction scheme. This I can deduct. And once I do all this, I will get a figure. Now, this is the figure, this triple X. This is the figure that you have to put into your taxable income format. So that means this will be a working note. This will be a working note. Because it is a lengthy calculation, so you can either put the final answer here and you can show it as a working note. Understood? Got the connection here? When I was studying tax, I wish my faculty had told me what is the connection of each items that we are studying. You know, it took me by the end of income tax chapters to realize, oh, this is what I've studied. Oh, it is connection. And I got to know that only by the end of income tax. So one thing I always focus during my classes, I want my students to know what they are studying. I want them to get the connection when they're studying that chapter itself. I don't want them to finish up income tax and then realize, oh, this is what we did right now. That's why I'm always asking whether you understood. Are you able to catch up? Did you get the connection? So if you get stuck at any point, I want you guys to immediately tell me that, okay? Just immediately tell me that we didn't understand. We'll go through that again. So far, is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, we have missed out a couple of points here. So we'll just go back to explanations of each one of those points. So number one, again, I'll show you this format as well. Same salary, wages. I've just expanded a couple of things. Then you have to take the total salary. You have to take the annual salary, which is monthly salary into months worked in the current tax year. We have already discussed that. Let's say Anita only worked for 4 months, so 4 into monthly salary. If annual salary is directly given, take the annual salary. Now keep in mind, we have to consider the current tax year. So current tax year is the month worked from 6th April 2023 to 5th April 2024. Okay. Then Bonus, rules of earnings, gratuity, excess of mileage allowance. Now, what are these non-cash benefits? It can be car, company, van, living accommodation, beneficial loan, private use of asset, other taxable benefit. Now, there are allowable or deductible expenses not reimbursed. These are expenses which I can deduct. This is the same list: employee contribution to OPC, deficit in mileage allowance, professional subscription, charity donations under payroll scheme, travel expenses to temporary workplace, travel expenses to meet a client, any expenses paid by employee wholly or exclusively for work. Now, disallowed non-deductible expenses: employee contribution to PPC, employer contribution to OPC and PPC, travel expenses made by employee to permanent workplace, golf club membership made by employee to entertain client. And ഇതെല്ലാം ചെയ്ത് കഴിയുമ്പോൾ കിട്ടുന്ന final. These zeros will give you marks, okay? Final is your total employment income. Now I want to bring some complications here. I'll give you a couple of examples. Think carefully and give me an answer.
Ma'am,
Yes,
what is this deficit in mileage allowance?
I'll come to that. പറയാം. That's a calculation. That is an additional calculation. I'll come to that. So before that, travel expense paid to visit a client. Okay, so you need to tell me, should I add it, deduct it, or put a zero? There are three implications. Either you add it, either you deduct it, or you put a zero. Or you can say temporary workplace. So tell me, travel expense paid to visit a client or a temporary workplace, what will you do? Will you add it, will you deduct it, or will you put a zero?
Deduct.
I will deduct it. Okay, I agree with it. Now, how about, let me change this word, and got reimbursed by employer. Now, what will you do? Think and give me an answer. You can deduct it, but you got the money back from your employer. Now, what will you do?
Add.
വേണ്ട, ഡിഡക്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും, പക്ഷെ ആ പൈസ അതേപടി തിരിച്ചു കിട്ടി. So the net effect is zero. Yes or no? You can deduct it, but you got it back. So what is the net effect? Zero. So you will put a, what will you do there? You'll put a
Zero.
Zero there. Understood? Did you understand the way of thinking? Now, I can't teach you all these things. You can't by heart all these things. You have to apply a little bit of logic there. This is things which I can deduct, but I got the exact amount back. Now, I cannot add it, I cannot deduct it, I'll just put a zero. Got it? So next one. Let's say travel expense paid to travel expense to permanent workplace. But reimbursed by employer. This is travel expense to permanent workplace, which is paid by Anita, okay? But later she got it back from the company. She received the money back from the company. Normally, you guys tell me, travel expense paid to permanent workplace, what will you do? Normal situation, travel expenses to permanent workplace, what will you do? Yes, correct. എന്ത് ചെയ്യും? Normally travel expense to permanent workplace എന്താ ചെയ്യുന്നേ? Zero അല്ലേ indicate ചെയ്യുന്നേ? You're not supposed to add it. You cannot deduct it. You put a zero. But now you got the money back. So it's like you were supposed to put a zero, but you got the money back. Tell me, what is the reaction? What will be the reaction? Zero plus plus. What will be reaction? You will add it. Alfia? Yes. Yes, on correct. Alfia, clear ayo?
Okay, ma'am.
So if it's like you are supposed to deduct, but you got it back, positive plus negative, it becomes 0. If you are supposed to put a 0, you got it back, then you have to add it. Okay, so this is how it works. Now, one more example. So I think these are the points which I've included. So this is about this golf club membership. Golf club membership paid by Anita to entertain client. First and foremost, you tell me, what will you do? Golf club membership paid by Anita to entertain a client. As per the tax rule, it is disallowed. I need to indicate 0. Okay. So it is in the list. Golf club membership paid by employee to entertain a client. I have to put a 0 there. But it got reimbursed by employer. Employer reimbursed that amount. They're actually supposed to put a 0. They paid you back the amount. Now tell me what will be the reaction? What
Add.
will you will add it? You'll add that figure. Okay. So I hope you understood this. Now a summary of that. So if an expenditure is disallowed, what do you mean by a disallowed expenditure? That these are all the examples I gave you right now. Golf club membership is a disallowed expenditure. Disallowed expenditures are employee is not supposed to deduct from the earnings. These are expenses which you cannot deduct from your earnings. Now, golf club membership paid to entertain the client, paid by the employee and reimbursed by the employer. You have to add it. You have to add it. You are supposed to put a 0. You got it back. You will add it. If it is not reimbursed, you will put a 0. Then, exempt benefit from the employer or as part of the work. What do you mean by exempt benefit? These are benefit from the employer for which no tax is payable. Example, free gym, canteen meals. You can put a 0 for that. Can you just read these sentences and see whether you have any doubts in what you have written here? Just read through it and see whether you have any sort of doubts. This is exactly what we discussed right now. So I don't want to confuse you. I've only given things which are commonly seen in questions. Okay. There are plenty of examples in your textbook, but half of them never appear for the examination. So I don't want to confuse you. Let's keep things which are only exam oriented. Is it clear, guys? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So you can go through this. Then out of the list, we have to discuss about bonus and mileage allowance. Okay. So let's do an interesting calculation first. Let's discuss about mileage allowance. So I want you guys to write this into your notebook. I want you to give the heading mileage allowance. So there are two situations for mileage allowance. Either it can be excess of mileage allowance or it can be deficit in mileage allowance. Point number 1 to keep in mind is employee uses his own car. Normally, question will be set with car, or you can even assume van. Okay. There are also examples of bicycle and pedal cycle. This is never tested in the examination, so forget about it. So employee uses his own car or van for employment purpose, not for personal use, for employment purpose. Say they want to visit a client, they have to travel all the way to Tamil Nadu, so they will be using their own car to travel to Tamil Nadu. So employee uses his own car for employment purpose. Okay. Now, so they will be spending some money. Spending money for fuel and other expenses during this usage. Okay. So let's say they spent 1,500. And they got some money back from the company. So they got some amount reimbursed by employer. So the reimbursement will be like 50 pence per miles. Normally this is how they get it. Or sometimes it will be 60 pence per miles. Okay, so they received 50 pence for each miles traveled. So let's assume that total miles traveled is 15,000 miles. Okay. So I'm going to do a calculation here. Don't write anything, just listen. The total cash received is equal to 15,000 into, let's assume in our case, we are going to make it 50 pence. Okay, example, it will keep on changing as per the question. So let's say 50 pence. What do you mean by 50 pence? 0.5 pound. 50 pence is 0.5 pound. Okay. So what is the cash that I have received is equal to 15,000 into 0.5. This is the money I have received from employer. Any doubts for this? This is given in the question. I have just calculated the total figure. Any doubt with this? Any doubt with this? Okay. So tax authority is telling you this is a money that you have received from your employer, like your salary, bonus, wage. This is money you received from your employer. You need to pay tax on that. But tax authority is very kind at this. They are telling you, okay, don't pay tax on 7,500. Make some deductions. So you can make a statutory deduction here. You can make a statutory deduction here. So what is a statutory deduction? For the first 10,000 miles. Now, this was example. This was exam. 50 pence was an example. It can change as per the question. But what I'm going to tell you is fixed. It is always fixed. The statutory deduction is for the first 10,000 miles. So the statutory deduction is for the first 10,000 miles up to 45 pence is allowed. Okay. So that means is equal to for the first 10,000 miles into 0.45. So 4,500 is allowed. How many miles did I travel? 15,000 miles. For the excess എത്ര വരുന്നത് 5,000 അല്ലേ? What is the excess here? 15,000 minus 10,000. The excess is 5,000 miles. For the excess, it is 25 pence is allowed. That means is equal to 5,000 into 0.25 pence. That means, what is the sum total of these two? What is the sum total of 4,500 plus 1,250? How much is it? Sum is 5,750. Now, what is the meaning of this? This is the money you got from your company. Out of this much money is tax free. Did you receive more than your tax-free limit? This is the tax-free amount. Did you receive more than the tax-free amount? Did you receive more than the tax-free amount? അർഹതയ്ക്ക് കൂടുതൽ നിങ്ങൾ കിട്ടിയോ?
Yes.
കിട്ടിയല്ലോ. അപ്പം ടാക്സ് കൊടുക്കണ്ടേ? So you'll have to pay tax on that. So the difference is, you have to tell me, will it be a positive figure or a negative figure? You received extra amount, right? This is what we call as excess of mileage allowance. And what do you do excess of mileage allowance? You have to pay tax. Will you add it or will you deduct it? Will you add it or will you deduct it? Alochna, will you add or deduct it? This is the money on which you have to pay tax. It is like an income for you. Till this much point, it is tax free. The excess amount is taxable. So will you add or deduct it? You will add it. Yes, you'll add it. Is it clear? Got it?
Okay.
Okay. Now, let's work on the same example. Instead of 50 pence, I told you this figure can change. Instead of 50 pence, the company only gave you 30 pence per mile. So how will our calculation change? How will your calculation change? Will this step change? Tell me. Will the first step change? Yes. Instead of 0.5, it will be 0.3. Okay. So instead of 15,000 into 0.3. Okay. Now, statutory limit is the same. For the first 10,000, it is 45 pence. And for the remaining 5,000, it is 25 pence. It is fixed. That means you actually received more than you received an amount which is lesser than you were actually supposed to receive. Okay? Got it? Is that clear? Your statutory limit pragaram, you were supposed to receive 5750. Up to 5750 was okay. But you only received 4,500. That means there is a deficit. So there is a deficit in, so we call it as deficit in mileage allowance. Deficit in mileage allowance. Is the difference clear? Is the difference clear? The deficit anangil, that means you don't have to pay tax, you can deduct it. Did you understand? Is it clear? Okay, now. So I'll show you the note for this. Go through this mileage allowance. Normally, the question will be set on car and van. Okay. There are also allowances for motorcycle and pedal cycle. This has never been tested for examination. But these points are given in the tax and allowances table. So you, even if you forget about it, it's okay. Anyways, car and vans are normally tested. So what is the condition in order to meet this? Employee uses his own car. That's very important. Employee uses his own car or van for employment purpose. That's very important, okay? They're using their own car or van for employment purpose. So they will receive some money from the company. That is different question from question to question. So they will receive some money, that money minus the statutory limit. This is the statutory limit, 45 pence for the first 10,000 miles and 25 pence for excess of that. So what you will do is we'll write a couple of examples. We'll write a couple of examples. Example 1. Anita used her car for employment purpose and traveled 25,000 miles, and employer paid her 60 pence per miles. You can give any name as per your wish. Okay, you don't always have to give Anita. Okay, so example 2. Example 2, the only change is Anita received. Baki everything remains the same. Anita received 45 pence per mile from the employer. This is example 2. Can you work it out and give me the answer quickly? You need to say whether it is excess of mileage allowance or deficit in mileage allowance. If it is excess, will you add or deduct it? If it is deficit, will you add or deduct it? So quickly do the calculation, give me an answer. There is a format for this. First, you have to write the cash received. First, you write the cash received. Cash received is for the total 25,000 miles, okay? And pence is divided by 100, you will get the pound value. So 60 pence in the varanjal, it is 0.6 pound. And if you
Ma'am,
don't, statutory limit is for the first 10,000, 45 pence. അതിന് മുകളിലുള്ളതിന് 25 pence. First 10,000, 45 pence. And above that, 25 pence. That's always fixed. So either way you are getting a deficit. Either way you are getting excess amount. Yes or no? Both cases you are getting excess. Yeah, how about, can we just change this Anita received 45 pence to 25 pence? Let's have one question where 20 pence, not 25, 20 pence. So it will become negative. So negative angle, it is deficit in mileage allowance. You have to deduct from employment. So this is your answer. Can you just check your answer? First one was excess of mileage allowance. Second one was deficit in mileage allowance. Can you just check your answer and see? Okay, Alfia, Anjun, did you get these answers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. അപ്പോൾ ഇത് clear ആണല്ലോ എന്താണ് deficit and excess of mileage allowance and what you need to do with that? I have included one more example. This is a part of your note as well. I have included one more example here. Now, so let's say traveled on his own car 18,000 miles during a tax year, out of which 15,000 miles were for business purpose. Business as if employment purpose. So, in the previous two examples which I gave you, this 25,000 was for employment purpose only, business purpose only for the purpose of work, not for any personal journey. But in this example, which I have included here, only 15,000 is for business purpose. The remaining 3,000 is for private journey. You received 50 pence from your employer. So how will the calculation change? The only change is the amount of cash that you receive. That should be calculated on this amount of cash that you receive needs to be calculated on the 18,000 miles itself. There is no change to that. So that is 18,000 into 50 pence. But your statutory limit has to be using 15,000. അതായത് ആദ്യത്തെ 10,000 45, then excess only take 5,000. Don't take 8,000. Take 5,000 into 25 pence. Is that clear? Is the difference clear? Is it clear? Did you understand the change in the question? So in the previous two examples, all the miles traveled were for the purpose of work. Here, you traveled 18,000 and received money for 18,000, but out of which only 15,000 was for your business purpose or your employment purpose. So the cash received will be for 18,000, but the statutory limit is only for 15,000. So for the first 10,000, 45 pence. For the remaining 5,000, 25 pence. So this is another example. It is already included in your notebook. You don't have to write it specifically. I hope that is clear. Okay. Then I hope you remember we have come across a word known as payroll deduction scheme. So I'll just show you the format to remind you about what is payroll deduction scheme. These are charity donations under payroll deduction scheme. You can deduct it in the budget. So these are amounts you can deduct from your employment income. Charity donation under payroll deduction scheme. So what is payroll deduction scheme? It will be very clearly said in the question, charity donation under payroll deduction scheme. Now, what is the meaning of payroll deduction scheme? Anita has given permission to her employer to deduct a little bit of her salary every month to pay to charity. Anita gave the permission. So Anita said, sir, you can deduct 2% of my salary every month and pay to a charity, and I only want the remaining 98% of my salary. So when the employee authorizes the employer to make a certain deduction from the salary to charity and donation, this is what we say payroll deduction scheme. So this is charity donation under payroll deduction scheme. So don't worry, nothing in detail will be asked. They'll tell you this is charity donation under payroll deduction scheme. Just deduct it from your employment income. Is that clear? Is it clear? So are you directly making the payment? No. Your employer is deducting salary from, your employer is making the donation from your salary. So the employer is paying on behalf of the employee. So that is about payroll deduction scheme. So mileage allowance, payroll deduction scheme. We've discussed about this aspect. Permanent workplace anengil. So sometimes employee will not have a permanent workplace. In that situation, they can deduct it. Temporary workplace not exceed 24 months. Travel from home to workplace, that is permanent workplace, is no deduction allowed. Then contribution to OPC is allowable. Subscription to professional body is allowable. We've discussed that point as well. Now some theory bit. Now, how will the question be set? If you want to read about this, I'll just tell you the page number. In your Kaplan, okay. So in your Kaplan textbook, I want you to read page number 132. I want you to read page number 132. There is a heading called travel expenditure. 132 and 133. Kaplan textbook 132 and 133. Kaplan textbook 132 and 133. Then, along with that, in your Kaplan textbook, there is a heading known as Employment and Self-Employment 128 and 120 till here. 129. Now, how will the question come? It will be a pure theory question. So they will give the story of Onjun. And they will ask you, determine if Onjun is employed or self-employed. What do you mean by employed? Onjun is working under an employer, under a company. There is an employment contract. So you have to determine whether Onjun is employed or self-employed. What do you mean by self-employed? He's not working under anyone. He is running his own business, or he is a freelancer. He is a professional. He is not obliged under the employment contract. So they will ask you to decide whether Onjun is employed or self-employed. Appo nammal engane decide cheyunne? We have to read the question. We have to see all the indications in the question. And from the indication, we have to decide whether that person is employed or self-employed. Now, what are the indications? So you guys tell me. Onjun is receiving monthly salary, yearly bonus, gratuities. Do you think he is employed or self-employed? He is receiving salary, bonus, incentives, and gratuities. Is he employed or self-employed? Think and give me an answer. ഈ മന്ത്ലി സാലറി കിട്ടുന്ന ആള് എംപ്ലോയിഡ് ആയിരിക്കോ സ്വയം തൊഴിൽ നടത്തുന്ന ആളാണോ അതോ വേറൊരാളുടെ കീഴിൽ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്ന ആളാണോ?
Employed.
Yes, that person is employed, no doubt. Second one. Imagine a situation where there is an employment contract, sick pay, there is paid leave, overtime payment. Who will receive all these benefits? Then there is redundancy payment. Who will receive it? Will an employer receive it or an employer receive or a self-employed person receive it?
Employee.
For example, you think about the case of a freelance ACCA faculty. So there are certain faculties who are only working in one institute. We call them as in-house faculty. So we can technically call them as employees, okay? Because they are under that institution. They can't work anywhere else. They're receiving a fixed salary every month. Even if they don't have class also, they'll be receiving a fixed salary. And they will be having other employee benefits, paid leaves and sick leaves and all those things. Then there is a freelance faculty who is not associated with a single institute, who is working in multiple institute. Now, for that person, they receive fees or trade profit or fees, professional fees. Now, they'll only receive the fees if they work. If they don't work a month, they'll not receive the money from the institute. They don't get sick pays or paid leaves or paid holidays or anything. They don't get such benefits. Is the difference clear? Okay. Now, who do you think to whom does the employer has more control over? Is it to the in-house faculty or to the freelance faculty? On whom does the employer has more control? On whom does the employer has more control?
In-house faculty.
Obviously, the in-house faculty, on the employee. So control is exercised on the employee rather than the self-employed person. Okay, then who do you think have more risk? Who will have a higher amount of risk? Is it an employee or a self-employed person? I had already given you the hint. Give me the reason for that also. Why? You're correct. Why? Why does the self-employed person is having more risk? Do they have any employment protection? Do they have redundancy payments, sick pay, paid holidays? Do they have a fixed salary? They'll only get a salary if they work that month. Another fixed salary if they don't take class for a month, they'll not get any payment for that. So financial risk is more to a self-employed person than an employed person. Okay? Then For a in-house faculty, do you think they have to bring their own laptops and equipments and projectors and pen and everything? Do they have to bring their tools? Do they have to bring their tools for an in-house faculty?
No.
No. All the materials, everything will be provided in the institute itself. But when you are a freelance faculty or working in multiple institute, you have to have your own laptop, your own iPad. You should have your own pen and all the facilities because you are working multiple places, right? So you have to bring your own tools for a self-employed person. Another one, when you are an employee, your company is giving you some work. Can you put that work to someone else? Can you tell someone else to do the work? Can you tell that? Can you hire another person to do your work? You're working in a company. You are an employee in a company. Can you hire another employee to do your work? ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമോ? നിങ്ങൾക്ക് വേറൊരാളെ ഹയർ ചെയ്തിട്ട് അവരെ കൊണ്ട് പണിയെടുപ്പിക്കാൻ പറ്റുമോ? ഇല്ല. You have to do the work that is assigned to you. But think of a freelance faculty. Certain cases they can hire an associate faculty and make them do the the evaluation of answer sheet or note preparation, all those things. So they can hire someone else to do that work. I think ഏകദേശം ഒരു ഐഡിയ കിട്ടുന്നുണ്ടോ? What are the differences when a person is employed and self-employed? Now read these points. The degree of control exercised over the person doing the work is high for employment. Whether the worker must accept further work, അതായത് കുപ്പിന്ന് വന്ന് ഭൂതത്തെ പോലെ പണിയെടുത്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കണമെങ്കിൽ, that is employment. They don't have a choice, they'll have to do the work. Whether they provide their own equipment, that is self-employment. Whether they can hire their own helper, that is self-employment. Where the financial and personal risk is high, that is self-employment. Where there is fixed salary bonus, that is employment. Where rights under employee protection, that is also employment. Okay, that employment is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, ഇതെല്ലാം നോട്ട്സിൽ ഉണ്ടാവില്ലേ?
If you want to read anything extra, see, this is a very long set of points. നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞ അതേ points ഉള്ളൂ. If you want to read anything extra in detail, you can refer to your textbook. അത്രേ ഉള്ളൂ. നിങ്ങൾ എക്സ്ട്രാ വായിക്കണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പൊ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു പോയിന്റിനെ കുറിച്ച് എലാബറേറ്റ് ആയിട്ട് അറിയണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ മാത്രം. So will it be tested for your examination? Maybe a 20% chance that they'll ask you whether this person is employed or self-employed. That's it. അത്രേ ഉള്ളൂ അതിന്റെ relevance. Got it? And the last part of this chapter. This chapter is over. Employment income ഇത്രേ ഉള്ളൂ. The next chapter is also related to employment income. That is the lengthiest one. So ഇവിടെ നമ്മുടെ format, if you see, we have discussed salary part. We will discuss bonus right now. These are all figures that will be directly given in the question. We discuss mileage allowance. We discuss deficit, employee contribution to OPC, professional subscription, travel expenses. We have discussed about OPC, travel expense, charity donation. ഇതെല്ലാം പറഞ്ഞു. There is these aspects we didn't discuss. This one. Living accommodation, car benefit, beneficial loan, private use, other taxable benefit. This will be discussed in the next chapter. That's a very lengthy chapter. Now, another thing to keep in mind is about bonus. The problem with bonus is that I'll keep it very simple for today and I'll discuss the remaining portion tomorrow. The thing about bonus is that there will be bonus 2 or 3 amounts of bonus given in the question. So bonus entitled on 1st April 2023. Bonus paid on 30th April 2023. Now tell me, which is this tax year? Entitlement date. Which is the tax year? 1st April 2023. Which is the tax year? 1st April 2023. Which is the tax year? 22, 23 tax year. Alle? Payment date. Which is the tax year? 23, 24. Same bonus. The bonus amount is same. Bonus amount is 30,000 pounds. Now the problem is entitlement date is 22-23 tax year. Payment date is 23-24 tax year. Now I hope you understood the problem. Can you tell me what is the problem here? Can you tell me what is the problem here? Bonus is an employment income. Can you tell me what is the problem here?
മാം ഒന്നുകൂടി പറയാമോ? ഞാൻ കേട്ടില്ല.
ബോണസ് എമൗണ്ട് 30,000 പൗണ്ട് ആണ്. ബോണസിന് നിങ്ങൾ അർഹരായത് 1st April 2023 വിച്ച് ഇസ് 22-23 ടാക്സ് ഇയർ. ബോണസ് നിങ്ങളുടെ അക്കൗണ്ടിലേക്ക് വന്നത് 30th April 2023 വിച്ച് ഇസ് 23-24 ടാക്സ് ഇയർ. Can you tell me what is the problem here? What is the yes. Very good, Anshul. Correct. എന്തായിരിക്കും ഇവിടുത്തെ പ്രശ്നം? ഈ 30,000 ഞാനിപ്പോ ഇത് ഏത് ടാക്സ് ഇയർ കാണിക്കണം? To which tax year should I show this 30,000 pound? അതല്ലേ ഇവിടുത്തെ പ്രശ്നം? Should I show it to 23-24 tax year or 22-23 tax year? So the answer is, if you are an employee എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ employee is any person other than director. Any worker other than director. Okay. So if that's the case, it is earlier of entitlement date and payment date. So when we say entitlement date, that is 1st April 2023 and payment date is 30th April 2023, which is earlier. ഈ രണ്ടെണ്ണത്തിൽ earlier ഏതാ? Which is earlier?
Entitlement date.
1st April 2023. Appo idu eda tax year? This is 22-23 tax year. So this bonus is the employment income of which year? It is the employment income of 22-23 tax, not 23-24. It is the employment income of 22-23 tax year. Is that clear? Is that clear? So
Okay,
forget
ma'am.
about all the other dates. Where in the date question you should only consider the entitlement date and the payment date. Take the earlier date. You are an employee. You are not the director. Okay, you are an employee. It is earlier of entitlement date and payment date. So you have to check, and whichever date falls first on that tax year, you have to show the bonus. So let's say the question is related to 23-24 tax year. You know what I'll do here? I'll write here bonus and I'll put a 0. Because I know that this bonus is for 22-23. And then this year the bonus alla. So I cannot completely ignore it. Remember, you have to put a 0. Got it? Is it clear?
Okay, ma'am.
So that was about employment income chapter. Got an overview? So we've discussed the main format of employment income. Don't worry, you will not have a question which includes all the elements. Not all of them. So this is the format. And why are you doing this format? Because the end figure is what we will take you to a taxable income format. Non-savings income under non-savings income, you have to show your employment income. So this end figure will go to your taxable income format under non-savings income. The list. You have to decide whether a person is employed or self-employed, and you have to find out the features there. Then, what is this rules of earnings? For the director, we'll discuss tomorrow. What is rules of earnings? In which tax year you need to show the bonus? That is rules of earnings. Yes, it will be shared today. It will be shared. So, to which tax year will the bonus belong? For an employee, it is earlier of payment date and entitlement date. I'll talk about director tomorrow. These are allowable deductions. I don't want you to read this. This is also not relevant because I've already included this in the format. This is mileage allowance. Employee uses his own car for employment purpose. And example, payroll deduction. And that's it. Yes. So, how's the chapter? And this normally gets tested for section C. It's a pakka section C question where they ask you to find out the employment income. How's the chapter? There are small adjustments, okay? Lot of things to remember, but the difficulty level per adjustment is less. Not good. Okay. But when you do section C, it will be interesting. Section C questions set from employment income is the where you can score the easy marks. Now 2 days later, we'll start off with our first section C question. So you will get an idea of how it is being tested. Okay. So we'll wind up for today. Tomorrow we'll be doing with taxable benefit. So anything else? Shall we wind up? Okay. Okay, guys. Good night. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.